Hello. Welcome back, crusty crew.
What did she say?
I probably should give y'all an explanation as to why I'm calling y'all crusty crew. I'm sure a lot of y'all, if you are like me with a short attention span, grew up watching SpongeBob and you know what crusty crew is in that regard. However, when I think of crusty crew, I think of people who are kind of reclaiming this idea of crust. No, I'm just kidding. No. When I think of crusty crew, I think of people who embody transformation, who understand that right now you may not be at your best, but there is more to come. And you're okay with being a little crusty right now. We all are a little crusty right now. Okay? If it wasn't for Brittany, shout out to Brittany, I would be a little crusty right now. Okay? I wanted to start episode 1 by acknowledging everyone who watched my first episode, everyone who genuinely supported the topic of that episode and showed out, because it was something that was very vulnerable. It was a very vulnerable moment for me. But 2, I saw somebody talk about how, or somebody comment on my YouTube video short saying that this video kind of reminds them of a subtweet in podcast form, which clock it. I respect that. Do I want that to be my brand for all of my videos? No. Do I think that video happened to come off that way because of the context? Yeah, I do. And honestly, it is what it is. I can be a little shady. That's just who I am. And I'm not going to filter myself for anybody or anything, especially when it comes to me sharing my personal experience with domestic violence. So again, I want to thank everyone who was able to watch the video, everyone who has followed me on Instagram at aglorious.mess, and also my personal page, which is not as important. But today, we are going to be talking about a continuation of that last video. Definitely not going to be as shady. Going to be more so a shorter video talking about some of the things that I have been hinting at throughout the week on my Instagram page. Again, if you follow me, you might have seen some of the things that I have been talking about on my Instagram page and just sharing with you all in terms of the 4th part of my last video, which is my rebirth. I mentioned that in that video that I was going to continue it in a separate video because that one was already getting kind of long, and I wanted that video to be more so focused on the trauma and kind of contain it in one place versus the rest of my video focusing solely on me and the people who I'm going to bring on the podcast and more positive perspectives. So today we're going to be talking about rebirth. And a quick recap of my last video, the 4 sections that I touched on were the fairy tale, the disillusion, the reckoning, and then rebirth, which is what's going to be today's video. So there are 3 areas that I think have significantly impacted my rebirth. And honestly, let's even start off with what rebirth is. For me, we're not going to go into the Merriam-Webster definition because it's not necessary. But for me, in this context, my rebirth is kind of like literally a phoenix rising from the ashes. And I also want to say that a rebirth can happen multiple times in your life. They talk about death of an ego and things of that nature, and I definitely think that I experienced a death of my ego and a death of just the person that I used to be, which sometimes can be a bad thing, but most of the time it's a really good thing. And even when you think that it is a bad thing, it may be a good thing because you are shedding something, you're shedding habits that you have become so comfortable with that have become part of you, as opposed to you rising to the occasion of who you are meant to be in life. Okay. And these habits are holding you back, you know? So I wanted to touch on 3 areas in particular that I've transformed in, which have transformed my life. Okay, so let's start off with the first one. The first one, and I think it is the most important one, is my faith, y'all. I grew up as a Christian. Actually, it's a very long backstory of my faith, but I grew up as a Christian. Grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, with my family, and I grew up going to Hillside Truth Center, which was the pastor was formerly Dr. Barbara King, who was passed away a few years ago. If you're not familiar with Hillside Truth Center, it is a very, it's non-denominational, it's New Thought. So you'll see people of all backgrounds, of all walks of life who are welcome in church. And the idea of everything, or the idea of the preachings and the teachings that are taught there, is that everything centers around love. Everything you do, you move in love, you do everything in love. And so that was kind of the foundation of my religious and faith background. And then my mom's family is Episcopalian. So when I used to go to New York with my family, we would always go to St. Luke and St. Matthew's, which is Episcopalian church that's in Brooklyn that my grandmother still frequents to this day. A lot of my family still go there. We still do a lot of work out of that church. And my relationship with God has been interesting, to say the least. I've always had a strong connection to God, even before I was born. A quick story about this, because my mom actually called me the other day and talked about this to me. But when my mother was pregnant with me, she found out she was pregnant with me when she was 33 years old. And she was not expecting another child. She'd already had 2. My brother was probably like 5 at the time. My sister was probably like 11 or 12. And so she was not sure if she was going to keep me. And she had already kind of made a decision that she was not going to. And I'll let you fill in the blanks. She had an appointment. Okay, she found out she was pregnant with me on like a Sunday, and she had an appointment on Wednesday. And so she just cried and cried and talked to my grandmother about it, talked to my aunts about it. And one night, before this appointment on Wednesday, she had a dream about she was in a pool, and there was a blonde woman at the bottom of the pool. Eyes were open, but you could tell that she wasn't, I don't know if my mom really specified if she was alive or not, but you could just see this woman at the bottom of the pool. And then my mother was also in the pool, and she saw this baby just following her. And the baby was on its side. It wasn't facing down, so it wasn't dead, and it wasn't facing up, so it wasn't alive. It was on its side. And when my mom told my grandmother about that story, my grandmother mentioned something along the lines that, this baby is unknown. Like, they don't know if they're going to be alive or if they're going to be sent back to heaven. And so it's undecided. And that really impacted my mom. And so she decided that she was going to keep me. And there were a few other things that were going on. Obviously, when you're 34 years old, pregnant, that can be considered a geriatric pregnancy. And especially in the late 90s, early 90s, mid 90s, 90s in general, late pregnancies often directly relate to children being born with autism or Down syndrome or just any kind of birth defects. And so my mother's doctor, was like giving my mom an understanding that I may come out Down syndrome or with Down syndrome. So all that's going on, my mom just praying, family's praying over her, she just hoping for the best. And the day that I was born, all of my family actually a lot of my family lived in the same apartment complex when I was born. So when I was born, all of my cousins were there in the delivery room watching me be born, y'all. It was crazy. But before I was born, I came a little bit early. I was born on the 23rd. And so My mom went into labor. She was frantic because my doctor was on vacation. So she was like, who's going to deliver my baby? All this stuff. And a doctor was able to deliver me. And my mom was expressing all of her concerns to the doctor. And they're not supposed to do this. If you're a doctor, you know that you're not supposed to do this. But the doctor came and prayed over my mother. And she said that she felt God just go whoosh through her. And she said she feels like in that moment, God changed the trajectory of my life in that moment. And I came out, was not Down syndrome, obviously, or did not have Down syndrome, obviously. And yeah, that's the beginning of my faith journey. But as I got older, I knew what God was. I knew we went to church all the time. I knew that it was important, but yeah, I hadn't been impacted by that. So fast forward to, I want to say I was 9 years old, Black History Month. I was so enamored by Dr. Barbara King, to see a Black woman, an older Black woman who has gone through all of these hardships, who has seen Jim Crow through her very own eyes, opened up an institution like Hillside Truth Center, was very close to other phenomenal women, LOL, like Maya Angelou and Oprah, you know? And so for Black History Month, I decided to do my Black History Month project on her. And so while doing that, I did so much extra reading on her, really dug deep into her life. And that is when I found out that she said in her memoir that God spoke to her when she was 13. Now, there is another there's another Black woman who's had a large impact and grand impact on not only the Black community, but just in every community, all demographics, Oprah, who also mentioned it in her memoirs that God spoke to her when she was around 12 or 13. So at this time, with my limited understanding of God and Christianity, I just knew that God was going to speak to me when I was 13 years old. And so I was so excited. I was like, I don't hear God now. I think I feel him, but I'm unsure. And mind you, during this time, I'm struggling with like anxiety and things like that I also could not put a name to. And so from the ages of 9 through 13, for those 4 years, I just knew that when I turned 13, God was going to speak to me and it was all going to make sense. I'll let you in on a little secret. God indeed did not speak to me when I was 13. Okay. I don't know what I was thinking, but he did not open his mouth and speak to me. I just thought that I was going to hear, oh, Kyle, it's me. But no, I didn't. And I was very disappointed by that and kind of disillusioned too. I was like, okay, like, I'll keep going to church. I'll keep doing these things, but like, God ain't speaking to me. He's not worried about me. He's not checking for me. Whatever. And I fell back on, I guess, the default of, everyone else is praying for me. I don't have to pray for myself. That's why I've been able to get so many blessings in my life. Like, everyone else is praying for me. I ain't praying for myself. Okay. And then I went through some real shit, which I'll get into in some other videos, which some of it is kind of included in the last video. But I went through some real shit, y'all. Some real shit. And when I look back on that time, I look back on like some of the most difficult decisions I've had to make with fresh eyes, walking in my faith now, I know that although it might have sucked, and it still kind of does suck, God had to do that. Every single thing that has happened in my life is part of a plan that I have no knowledge of, that I have to trust. Because if I don't, I'll end up having to deal with some of the hardships that I had to deal with before because of how hard-headed I was. And so fast way forward to after some of those hardships where I'm being more intentional about my relationship with God and my walk with my faith. And I decided earlier this year, actually, that I was going to be baptized, y'all. Now, I don't believe I was baptized as a baby. I think I had a baby dedication and a christening, but I do not believe I was baptized as a baby. My parents will have to correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure I wasn't. So I was baptized earlier this year in spring, and it was a really emotional decision for me to make. I will say that my father inspired me to do it. He was baptized in the same church. I go to Light of Joy in Riverdale, Georgia. He was baptized in the same church maybe a couple of months prior to me, maybe a few months, more than a couple. And I just felt convicted to take the plunge. Like, literally. I'll insert a clip here for y'all to watch. Hallelujah! But yeah, y'all. And if anyone's wondering, I won 2 scarves, a bonnet, and a swimming cap, and my hair came out perfect. I just was laid. But yeah, I was baptized earlier this year, and I took that very seriously. It was I wouldn't say it was a big change, but around that time, I wouldn't say that after I was baptized that everything just clicked, you know? I think sometimes people think that, oh, I'm going to take the plunge, and then again, God is going to speak to me. And the reason why I actually chose to be baptized in the church that I was baptized in is because I had learned so much about my responsibility and my walk in my faith. You know, it's not just all you go to church and God talks to you. You pray over your meal, God talks to you. He gives you discernment and all these things. Like, you have to know him. And the only way to know him is if you know the word. And one thing that my pastor does that I absolutely appreciate and prefer over a lot of the other pastors in Atlanta is that, of course, he's going to interpret the Bible from his own perspective. But before he does that, he's going to read you the scripture and tell you exactly what was going on in that part of the Bible. Exactly what was going on in that chapter, you know, so that one, it kind of makes you want to go and read the books yourself, but also it leaves a lot of space for your own interpretation as opposed to believing what your pastor's telling you. But yeah, so I started to do that. I started to go to church every Sunday. There are some Sundays that I miss it, and I experience this immense level of guilt. But for the purpose of this video, I won't go too much into detail. But yeah, I'll go to church every Sunday. I even started a Bible study group with me and some of my girlfriends. It's called the Beloved Collective, or the Beloved Collective, rather. And the first few meetings, it was just very, very magical. I think we've had to be a little bit more intentional about meeting up, and so we haven't seen each other in a few months in terms of the Bible study or Beloved Collective, but still having that community of women and knowing that they are all God-fearing and knowing that I can lean on them if something is to happen in my life, or I just need some extra love and support from people who I know have my best interest in mind. It's been really great to have them around. So, and also my journey with my faith has strengthened my relationship with my father, not just my father, but my father. My dad and I have always had a really good relationship. I've always been a daddy's girl. We still go to Carrabba's together. We used to bond over eating and watching documentaries and watching Courage the Cowardly Dog. And we still bond over all of those things. But sometimes I can just call call my dad and just cry and thank God for all of these new things that he's revealing to me. And I've also noticed that a lot of times God will reveal things to me or bring me to a realization while I'm on the phone with my father. I'll just have epiphanies like, wow, I hadn't thought about this. I'll be like, I haven't thought about this like this before. And my dad would just be like, yeah. Sometimes he speaks through you. So, so yes, that's the main area that has helped me in my rebirth is definitely my faith, y'all. Because faith can move mountains. And I know it's a figure of speech, but it is a very, very real thing for me, for sure. So, I know I said this video wasn't going to be that long, y'all. I'm already on 20 minutes. Girl, I won't. These next 2 sections won't be very long. I'm going to just touch on them briefly. Briefly, okay? 2. This is only supposed to be 3 minutes of me describing these things, y'all. I've been talking for 20 minutes. 2. I know y'all haven't seen this body. I know in the last video I said I'd be in the gym, working on fitness. And I do. And do. So, similar to my faith journey, y'all. My wellness journey has been up and down. I've always been a thick girl. I said that in my last video. I've always been a thick baby, okay? One thing my mom loves to talk about is that I came out thick. Knees, eyes, knuckles, feet, thick. I was thick. Still am very thick. My ankles, I have no ankles. My legs go straight into my feet. Thick, okay? So, I've always been a thick girl. And I might also should add that I was a thick girl born to a mother who was very petite her entire life. Not petite as in like short petite, but my mom was a model. So she had a very model frame, probably like a size 0'2", 5'8", very thin. And then my sister also was, I wouldn't say she's very thin, but definitely, like, I definitely got the thick gene, y'all. I don't think my sister or my mom has ever been my size before in terms of like genes and stuff, like curves. My sister maybe when she was pregnant, but no, I don't think she up there with me. But always been thick, never had a booty. If you don't get it, oh well, I can't explain to you. But yeah, never had a booty. Ass was flatter than a pancake. Okay, ass was flatter than a flat top. Okay. And so I never liked working out. I cheered a little bit when I was in middle school, but my parents, boy. Dad, he be in the gym every single day. He does not play about being in the gym at all. And my mom, now she doesn't. Like, she'll go to her 5 a.m. classes and she'll go to work. She'll go to the gym after work. Like, they do not play about their wellness and fitness, okay? But I was always like, oh, I didn't worry about that. And actually, I don't think my siblings were either, but I think they are now. But there was a time during COVID where I was working out like crazy, okay? And I think that was the skinniest I had ever been from working out. Please hear that I said from working out, okay? Because I've been skinny before from stress, but from working out, that was as skinny as I've ever been. But I still wasn't seeing the results that I really wanted to see. And I'd always been super inconsistent. Like I'll be working out for like 6-7 months straight and then just done. I see like I lost the weight and then I'm not staying consistent with it. Also, my eating habits were trash. Not saying that I ate trash food, because I didn't grow up on fast food and just unhealthy stuff in general. However, I didn't have good eating habits. And so I wouldn't eat all day, but then I would binge at the end of the day because I was so hungry. Also, I was eating a lot of carbs. Grew up in a bread and pasta family. We love some bread, okay? Okay? Sion women, us and bread go together real bad, okay? So I grew up in a family that loves bread, loves pasta, loves carbs, butter, all of that. We love rice. We're a Caribbean family. Also, we be drinking. You know how liquor be holding the weight in your body. And so I just was like, you know what? It is what it is, whatever. And I would say last year or the year before last, maybe 2023, I really, really got into my fitness journey. Again, very inconsistent. I would work out for a few months, then be done. Work out again for a few months, then be done. And it wasn't until maybe I started working out before my baptism, but I want to say it was this year that I was really like, you know what, Ikaya, you really, really, really have to make a commitment to yourself. And it wasn't even just about like working out and looking good and having a fat ass like Megan Thee Stallion. Intrusive thoughts, y'all. Intrusive thoughts. It was more so about me having that discipline. I noticed that I was really lacking discipline in my life. You know, like when you're a child and you're told to do things and you have discipline from your parents, and then you become an adult and you realize that you have free will. Yeah, I have too much free will. Way too much free will. And so for me, working out was discipline, and not only going to the gym and doing hard things physically, but also doing hard things mentally, having to show up for work, having to travel all the time for work. Spending habits. My spending habits are fucking terrible. I spend so much money all the time. I spend so much money, y'all. I love a spin a bag. Okay. But discipline on spending habits, you know, just making sure that I'm being responsible. And I felt like all of these things just came with me turning 26 and becoming a full grown adult, really. And so, my wellness journey eventually became more than just working out. Now, like I said, I never had bad spending or bad eating habits in terms of like eating bad, but I wasn't eating enough. I definitely wasn't eating enough protein. I was eating too many carbs. I was probably eating enough greens, but could be eating more. I wasn't getting all the nutrients that I needed. I was not taking multivitamins. I was not doing any of those things. None of it. And that wasn't how I was raised either. My parents raised me to be very healthy and very conscious of my health. My mom is a breast cancer survivor, and my father had a very severe heart attack when I was younger. And so for them, it's really important that I maintain my health, you know? And I think when they always say that 25 is when your frontal lobe fully develops, but I really do feel like 26 is when, my frontal lobe developed when I was 25, but I feel like 26 was the time or the age where I really started to put things into action. Like my words became actions, okay? And so, in order to not beat a dead horse, in order to stay on time, y'all, this is hard. I'm a yapper with free will. Okay, last piece. And y'all tell me if y'all want to hear more about these. I can make individual videos about these things and bring some of my people on here. We can get into that later, but last piece. And this might get y'all. Because I know I seem like somebody who is just so confident. And she went to the graduated from the number one HBCU, that for free. And she has such great ideas. And she speaks so well. Blah, 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 blah. I struggled a lot with seeking outside validation. Listen. And be the ones you don't even think. Honestly, I can't even say that. Y'all might have thought that I was seeking validation at some points. Follow me on Instagram, and y'all might be a little bit more emotionally mature than I was. You were seeing some of the things I posted and was like, damn, girl, like, we get it. Okay? But one thing that helped me was turning that external validation into self-validation. Okay? And I think, again, this is something that I teeter-totter with. It was very up and down. In college, I had a lot of self-validation, okay? Now, there were some instances, there were some minor setbacks. Y'all won't even get that. It's okay. There were some minor setbacks that had me feeling like, damn, I thought I was that bitch. I guess I'm not. Well, however, when COVID hit, I spent a lot of time at home with my parents. I spent a lot of time with myself. And I really, really, really started to love myself and remember just how proud of myself I was. I was wearing my natural hair out more often. Honestly, my hair is probably the healthiest that I've been since I went to college. Like, super healthy. It was growing beautifully, all of that. And this is also around the time that I met my ex that I was talking about in that video. Well, not met him, but started dating him. And also started a new job, straight out of college. Was trying to figure out who I was outside of just being a Spelman graduate. And all of that seeking of external validation started to creep back in. And so I started to do things that just made me feel better. Dyed my hair crazy colors, started to just do things for the plot. I was trying to maintain this image that so many people had already perceived of me. And I knew it wasn't me. But I knew that people liked that perception of me so much that I was like, well, fuck it. Like, I'll just keep doing it. I'll keep being that person, you know? Now, I won't say that the perception of me that everyone had was completely opposite of who I was. Like, granted, there were some things that, that are me. However, I just noticed, and this all ties in with like my faith and my fitness, mostly my faith. I noticed that I was practicing avoidance by doing things that would then be validated by people who really didn't matter to me. It's like, for instance, I loved dyeing my hair. That was a great time in my life. But at the time, I think I liked dyeing my hair more because of the reactions that I was getting from people than for myself. And how I know that is because I was dyeing my hair off to the point to where it was frying off, y'all. Like, literally, I had probably like this much hair in my bang because I was bleaching it. It was bright pink. And then also I wanted to wear it straight. I wanted to do all these things that all the girlies are doing, all the Instagram baddies are doing. I want to flat iron my edges. I want to do all this stuff. I want to use Gus to be things that I didn't typically do, but felt like, oh, I'm not who I was in 2021 anymore. And I've already taken the leap into this new persona. So let me just stick with it. And I don't want to bring astrology into it, which I'm always going to do. But I am an Aquarius. And I feel like one of the traits of an Aquarius is that we oftentimes will adapt to our environments. We are chameleons, we will be the reflection of whoever we're speaking to, whatever conversation that we're in. We can adapt. We can fit in anywhere. And I took that characteristic and kind of just applied it to my entire life. And I didn't even realize it. I went from, in high school and middle school being the overachiever and not really knowing who I was still in middle school and high school, which most people don't, but went to a predominantly Black schools, was always called an Oreo, was always told like, Kyle, you're too white for this. Mind you, I'm not white at all. I'm not white at all. Just need to make that very clear to some of y'all. But you're like, oh, you're so white. You probably voted for Donald Trump. Now, mind you, this is all just like adolescent bullying, but still, it affected me a lot. So when I got to high school, I was like, oh, hell yeah. I'm about to be a Negro for sure. I'm listening to Young Thug. I'm listening to Rich Gang. Granted, I really enjoyed it. I'm listening to Rich Kids. I'm like, yeah, I'm blackity black, blackity black, black, blackity black, black, black. Okay? Black. All right. And I knew I was going to Spelman. I was like, yeah, that's me. But when I was in high school, not only was I like Black, I was an overachiever. And so I was president of the SGA president my senior year. I was junior class president my junior year. Like, I did a lot of shit. Started a what is that thing called? Stock market club. Like, just did a whole bunch of stuff. And now looking back, again, I was seeking validation from teachers, seeking validation from my peers, literally doing things just to be like, hey, it's me. Look at me. Like, I'm smart. I know this is what y'all expect of me. So I'm going to keep doing it. Everyone sees me. And even when I got to college, I was trying to do that. And then I realized everybody was like that around me. And I was like, oh, okay. And I started seeking validation in a different way. I wanted to be the cool girl. So I was like, I mean, obviously I was still doing a lot of those scholastic things that were at my core. So like, not SAP, what is that thing called? PAC president. I was on the court for PAC. I was the English class president. I was in the English honor club, all of those things. But I was like, okay, well, I don't want to be held to this expectation all the time. And so I started seeking validation a different way. Like I said, being the cool girl. So I would be in the parking deck smoking and going to Cascade and doing all that stuff. Again, like, those things weren't interesting to me, but I know now that I was, again, seeking validation from my peers, from the guys that I liked, from the people who I thought were cool. And my justification for that during that time was, oh, I'm not mixy. I'm not going to these parties with the greater masses of the AUC people. Like, I'm not doing all of that. So I'm not seeking validation. I don't want to be like y'all. The whole Aquarius thing. Like, I'm so different. I'm so out of this world. But in the grand scheme of things, like, again, I was still seeking validation. And that just followed me into corporate America. You know, the decisions that I made at the time to like dye my hair and all these things, there were sacrifices that I had to make. Well, I didn't have to make them, but I thought that I had to because I was seeking validation from now my corporate peers. I can have pink hair. Yeah, it's a statement, but I can't have a pink afro. If I'm going to have pink hair, it needs to be straight, a decent length. It definitely could have been this long, you know? And so, again, not to be a dead horse, but seeking validation in all of those spaces and all of those things that I was doing. And it wasn't healthy for me, but I didn't know it. You honestly don't know that you're seeking validation sometimes. And I think this goes back into the grand scheme of things, or the grand theme of rebirth, is that you'll go through all of these stages in your life where you're so sure of who you are, and then that person dies. And then a new person arises, and you're like, oh, I just know this is who I'm supposed to be. And then you lose your job, and you have to pivot, and then something comes out of that. Like, one thing that I've learned about life and about my journey is that you absolutely cannot be married to the idea of life. You can't. Life as you know it today could be completely different tomorrow, next week, next year. And I think that we've gotten used to the big changes, like, oh, I'm getting married, or I'm having a baby, or somebody dies. But there are those small shifts in your life that will completely reinvent you. And if there's one thing that I can leave you all in this video, is to be open to that reinvention. You know, you're not meant to always be the same for the rest of your life. That's not what God has intended for you. And I want you to want more for yourself, to know that in any and every occasion, you can rise to the occasion. Okay? So, I know I said it was going to be a 20-minute video. I lied. I didn't lie on purpose, y'all. I told a small fib. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. If you watch this video, leave a glasses emoji in the caption. Yeah. Confuse the people who didn't watch this. Confuse the people who didn't listen all the way to the end. But I hope that you enjoyed this content. I'm definitely going to be giving you a lot more. I know that I'm a little bit scatterbrained. It's going to get better, y'all. I promise you. I told you I was going to get better last time. And look, I got me a little wig on. I got better lighting. Hopefully the sound quality is a little bit better. You got to believe me. Do you believe in me? Because I believe in you. All right, y'all. Follow me on at _ the Kenyatta. Actually, I should probably do it on the side. Follow me at _ the Kenyatta. Also follow me at my podcast Instagram page at aglorious.mess. And then also I'm going to link my website below so you can read my blog if you want to. Feel free to do it. And then, yeah. If you want to watch my last video, it'll be linked right here as well. So, I'll talk to you all later.